Ms. Claudette Colvin, we want to thank you for joining us and sharing your story with us. I just want to first of all ask you, you now live in South Texas, but your story and history takes us all the way back to Montgomery, Alabama. Tell us about that, your start, what you did even before Miss Rosa Parks.
My story before Miss Rosa Parks.
Yes, ma'am.
I was arrested. I was arrested for this same thing Mrs. Rosa Parks was arrested for 9 months before she.
9 months before Miss Rosa Parks. And it's not a story we hear often. So tell us about your arrest, your situation that day.
I was coming home. I was coming from school, and I boarded the bus, and the bus driver asked for the seats for me to give them up to a white passenger, and I refused to because I felt that it was unfair. There was no more seats, and so he asked for this four students to get up so this white lady could sit down. And three of the passengers, three of the students got up, but I remained seated. Because after the three got up, there was a whole seat opposite me, but she refused to sit opposite me because in those days a white person wasn't supposed to sit opposite a black person. So that's what happened. And because I refused to get up, that created a problem. And the bus driver proceeded on down to the next stop, all the way to Court Square. Um, and that's where he hailed a traffic patrolman to come on the bus to get me off, to arrest me. And since the traffic patrolman yelled that he had no jurisdiction here, he couldn't arrest me. And so the traffic patrolman got off, and I guess he talked to the bus driver, and they called the squad car. And since we was it's like at Court Square, it's like a little mini depot, where people exchange buses in different directions. So I guess they didn't want it was too many colored people and too many white people standing. So I guess they didn't want to cause a riot. So the bus driver uh, proceeded on in the same direction of the normal bus route. But at Bilby Commerce Street, the squad car patrolman come on the bus and asked me the same thing. That's where I was arrested at Bilby Commerce Street. And I was even more defiant then. And I said I wasn't there to get up because I paid my fare. It was my constitutional right.
Ms. Colvin, you did this at 15 years old. This was back March 2nd, 1955. What gave you the strength and courage to do this at 15 years old?
Oh, growing up with that experience in a segregated environment, everything was segregated. And one of the things that gave me, I knew that it was a Negro history of February. And at that time, we discussed our heroes. And at that time, my instructor, Mrs. Geraldine Nesby, and my other instructor, This is my social studies, Ms. Joseph Lawrence. Well, we start, instead of singing Negro history, I would say Negro spirituals and reciting poems, we decided to discuss what was happening locally, and we wrote essays about how we felt in living in this environment. So we talked about we discussed Booker T. Washington. Well, we Booker T. Washington and George Washington. Well, we all knew about that, but we even talk about Frederick Douglass, and we talk about Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman. And so I was so intrigued about Harriet Tubman so much because she was the Underground Railroad and Sojourner Truth and she was outspoken about rights, our human rights, and so that's what gave me the courage to do that. And my parents too. My parents too were telling me, "Oh, you always said that most white people treat us that way because they thought God had made them special." But my and so that's what I got the courage from my
Yes, ma'am.
parents and from my instructors and my instructors.
We're glad you had
From
that
my
courage.
experience and from my experience as a teenager, not being able to try on clothes in the department store, and that was terrible. Had a terrible feeling, even though you had the money finance, you couldn't go, you were treated that way.
Yes, ma'am. To know that you did this 9 months before Rosa Parks, but Miss Parks got more of the attention through all of these years. How do you feel about that?
Well, I don't feel bad about it because I know the people didn't want to recognize a teenager, no matter what, whether a teenager had a good cause or uh, you know, good ideas. The people, adults didn't listen to teenagers back in those days. So I was glad that the adults had spoke out because there were so many other things that were going on in our community that need to be, you know, people need to speak out about injustice that was happening in the Negro in the black communities. It wasn't just only it just wasn't just only the seat in the sitting be able to sit beside the white person on the bus. It was like we were paying taxes, but yet it's still we had unpaved streets we paid taxes and we didn't have indoor plumbing and we paid taxes and there was a whole lot of things that were going on that was unfair and you could plainly see that it was perpetrated on the people of color and so I was glad that she spoke out. Mrs. Parks spoke out. But what I was disappointed about is that they did not let people know the whole story after she was the spokesperson for the Montgomery bus boycott. But she did not was not responsible for the laws that was passed. That's the only thing that I was disappointed by. It was for the women that were responsible for the laws that was changed,
Yes, ma'am.
litigation that took place.
Yes, ma'am. Now, all of these years later, you're getting the attention and recognition for what you did at 15 years old. How does this feel now to have your place in history?
Well, how I feel now as I always see, like, well, seem like a story that's been told, like a story that, like a like you read in a chapter that you done skipped over a chapter in a book and got you want to get to the end instead of beginning, the middle, of it. You want to get to the end of it. So that's what I feel like. I've been skipped over a chapter in the book. So I'm glad that I'm here so I can tell my grandchildren what life was like. My grandchildren what life, so that they, could, you know, let them know that is how the struggle that we had as African Americans. That it wasn't easy. There's a lot of obstacles in our past, and but in doing so, that whatever we went intellectually, we had to do it harder than our fellow white people.
Yes, ma'am. One other thing I want to ask you about is you were arrested, three charges, two were dropped, one stuck, and that was the assaulting of the officers. That stuck with you throughout your life up until rather recently. Did that have an impact on you having that type of record throughout your life?
Well, people, uh, yeah, I got labeled as the girl in the bus thing, and the girl, and so by being labeled the girl in the bus thing, people say that wherever I go, you know, that stuck with me that I had broken the law. But I really hadn't broken the law. I had broken law. It was the Jim Crow law that I broke, that I rebelled against. It wasn't the state segregation law, separate but equal, because I wasn't sitting in the white section. I was sitting in the section that provided for colored people at that time. But what happened is, in order for in Jim Crow laws, the bus driver can ask you to get up and give you a seat to a white person. That was Jim Crow. So um, it stuck with me, but I never paid it. I didn't, dwell on it that much. I just kept on going and kept a low profile. And as long as I kept a low profile, I kept on going. I kept on going, kept on moving.
Yes, ma'am. I want to ask you one last thing here because there was the Mr. Judge Calvin Williams who expunged your charges 66 years after that. What did that mean to you to have your record expunged, and why was that important to you?
Oh, that was important to me because I wanted the people to know what it was life was like back in the day. Once upon a time in Jim Crow law that most people don't want to talk about now. They don't want to talk about. They don't want to talk about that we had to sit in the back seat of the bus. Most people they don't even want to talk about that we segregated schools and where I live, the school was only 3 blocks from me, and I couldn't go to elementary school. Had to be bused across the Booker T. Washington school. It was only 3 blocks from where I live. So they don't want to talk about none of these things about it. You couldn't be even in the hospital. You had to be that they had the black people down in the basement. They just don't want to talk about how horrible that the segregated law was, and they were sanctioned under the state law, saying it was separate but equal, but it was everything but separate and unequal. And I want to get to. let them know that what I was standing up for was for my is stuff for my constitutional rights. And that at that time, that when I did it, that I was, although I was a teenager, that it was right for me to do that, you know. So I was glad that I was glad that he did have my, you know, my name expunged, because doing that let you know that I did not break the law. And now I'm at 84 years old. So at that time I was 80, 82. I was a free teenager. That I was a free teenager and that I hadn't broken the law.
So that's got to be a good feeling for you now to have a clean record at 84 years old.
Yes, yes.
Ms. Colvin, I want to thank you so much for taking your time today to share with us, because you truly are living Black history, and it's a pleasure to be able to share your story. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're quite welcome. I'm glad to be here at 84 to tell it. Thank you.